Hi, I'm Debbie Moraes, and this is Legal Matters, the program you've come to know that addresses legal information and practical solutions, straight talk about a wide variety of topics that affect your work and home life. In recent programs, we've discussed a wide variety of topics that have been from business startup and healthcare reform to flood damage and real estate. Hopefully we've provided some help for you, some tips, some facts, and hopefully some information that helps you avoid some of the scams and some of the problems that have arisen around some of the more recent real estate modification and some of the flood damage issues that we've been addressing here in New England. So today we're going to discuss something that probably affects most of us, traffic violations. So we have with us today David Bazar from Audette Bazar Cordero Grasso Law Firm in East Providence. We miss Jackie. We're glad that you're here. So where do we begin? I don't know anyone who hasn't somehow managed to end up with a speeding ticket, a parking ticket, so let's go through the gamut of them.
Well, let's start with the traffic court and the different courts that handle traffic offenses. Usually it's district court or traffic court in Rhode Island, or municipal courts. If each city or town has set up a municipal court, they have jurisdiction over certain violations concurrently with traffic tribunal. People often consider those courts to be the people's court because it's the one where most people are going to have some contact with the law and with the court system. So where do you want to start? Well,
are they set up the same way in Rhode Island and Mass, or is there a distinction we need to be aware of when someone is asked to go to court?
Right, there is a distinction. Massachusetts has a little bit of a different system, and if Jackie were here, she'd tell us more about the Massachusetts system. But Jackie and I actually are fortunate enough both to serve as municipal court judges. Jackie in Bristol, I do East Greenwich. And it's really Rhode Island that I concentrate on. So for today's show, we're going to talk about Rhode Island.
Focus on that. Fair enough. Most people, I think, have had speeding tickets and parking tickets. I guess they call those strict liability offenses, no big criminal intent. What should happen when someone gets a violation? Should you just mail it in?
Usually this is the choice you have. If you get a ticket, and let's just take a speeding ticket, the typical speeding ticket, it gives you either the right to mail it in or a court date. If you have a reason that you want to go and see a judge about, for example, if you have a good driving record in Rhode Island, you have the opportunity to have the case dismissed so it comes off your record upon paying an administrative cost. If that's the situation, you ought to go. If there's some defense you might have, you ought to go. Otherwise, if it's just, you were speeding, it's your fourth or fifth ticket, mail it in. That's the best thing you can do.
I understand. I don't know about Rhode Island right now, but in other states there are points on your driving record. So never mind you pay the ticket of $85 or $100 plus whatever the court fee is, you also have that message passed along to the insurance company and up goes your rate from here to eternity. How does that work? Is it the same in every state? I know you can't address every state, right, but is it the point system that works against us on top of the violation?
All right, here's the way I would explain that. And if you drive in New York City, you'll see blocking the intersection X number of points. Rhode Island specifically doesn't have what I would call a point system, but it's really your insurance company that you're dealing with. And if you have a number of speeding violations or auto accidents or other type of offenses in the automobile, that's going to impact what you pay for your premium for your insurance. So that's why the Rhode Island legislature did create this, I'll give you a free bite at the apple, so to speak, if you have a good driving record, which means you haven't had a moving violation or used the good driving record in the last 3 years as a grounds to have a ticket dismissed. They'll dismiss the ticket so that the insurance company can't use it against you when they assess what your premium should be.
That's good to know.
It is. There's some caveats to it, though, that you need to know. You can't use the good driving statute in Rhode Island to have a ticket dismissed if you have a violation that involved passing a bus, for example, a stop
School bus.
School bus. If you're traveling at a speed and charged with, oftentimes police officers do give people a break. They don't always realize it, and I'll explain some cases I've had where they've come in to argue about this. But if they charge you for less than going 15 miles over the speed limit, you can use the good driving statute even if you were going more than 15 over. As long as the charge was less, you can use it. And the other thing is, if you have a CDL license, a commercial driver's license, you can't use the good driving record because the federal government has mandated that you can't mask a driving violation, which a good driving record would do, by having it dismissed on something other than guilt or innocence.
Now, you mentioned moving violation and that distinction as opposed to those that are lesser offenses. If I had an accumulation of 5 parking tickets because I happen to frequent Providence or Boston or whatever, I have to pay those. Are those going against my driving record too? They're not moving violations, right?
No,
how does that work?
They do not count against your ability to use the good driving statute, for example. They're not moving violations. In Providence, they can be expensive, but they're not moving violations.
Good to know. Does Massachusetts also, if you had the same situation, Boston tickets accumulating, or even moving violations, are they also in cahoots, should I say, with the insurance companies so that you're going to have that accumulation?
Well, again, the parking tickets don't generally affect your insurance at all. The moving violations will. And the insurance companies will be able to get, in every state now by compact, reports to each other as to if you have a violation in Florida and you don't pay it, and your driver's license is in Rhode Island, they will eventually notify the Rhode Island Department of Motor Vehicles to suspend your license.
Do they have to let you know if your license has been suspended?
All right, this is a public service announcement I give whenever someone comes into my courtroom and I notice when they give their address it's different than the ticket says. You have to notify the registry of where you live. If you move within 14 days or so, you're supposed to notify them that you've moved. If you don't, when they send the notice out that your license has been suspended, you won't get it. And you can now run into some very serious criminal problems driving on a suspended license.
Especially if you didn't know that it was suspended.
Even if you didn't know. You talked about strict liability. It doesn't matter. If you did not give them your address and you moved, them being the registry.
How about if nothing has changed, but for whatever reason you didn't receive that? Snail mail happens, or whatever.
You're still responsible for your status of your license, although I think you have a much better argument. If you haven't moved and you never received a notice and it can't be shown that it was sent to you, of probably resolving that issue more favorably than if you moved and didn't notify the registry of your new address.
Okay, anecdotally, someone receives an overtime parking ticket or just some sort of a parking ticket, and it happened to be in the city, and it's gone. They never saw it, they never paid it, they didn't know that it was around, and somehow months later, maybe a year later, they do get stopped, and now there's this mark that they received the ticket, and worse, compounding the offense, they haven't paid, suddenly they're in more trouble. What happens then?
Right.
What do you do?
You said the city, so we'll use Providence as an example. You get a ticket, and perhaps you didn't actually ever receive it because you drove off and it blew off and you never saw it, whatever it is. Providence in East Greenwich, we do the same thing when we go through all our unpaid tickets. We'll send you another notice, come to court, and explain to us why you shouldn't have to pay the ticket, the enhanced penalty, and in Providence they triple, I believe.
Triple.
Yeah. So come to court and tell us why you should not have to pay the ticket. If you don't show up for court then serious, more important issues can be raised by the court. Here's what happens in East Greenwich. And I have a lot of these cases on a fairly regular basis. People accumulate tickets. We will then send out notices to the people to say, you haven't paid these tickets, come to court and tell me why you didn't pay them. If they come to court, if it's my court, and they start explaining to me, here's the reason I didn't pay this one, this is what, I'll listen to you. Now if you don't show up to that court hearing, and what we do next is, we have in Rhode Island a statute called the owner's liability statute, which means the owner of the car is liable for those parking tickets. We will then send you another ticket and another hearing on the state statute, which is a much higher penalty, and say, come in and explain to us why you shouldn't pay all the other tickets plus this new ticket for the liability for the other tickets. If they don't show up to that one, we then suspend your license. By the time your license is suspended, people usually show up.
Yes, because now it directly